When I visited my parents' house with my husband, they refused to let us sleep in the same room. The reason was simple but cruel: he's white. Later, when my mom caught us resting together on the couch, she completely lost control. That night changed everything for me. Let me share my story with you. And if you connect with it, don't forget to support our channel by subscribing, liking, and sharing. It started with the long drive. Liam and I had been on the road for hours with our 2 little boys. The kids were cranky, and I was exhausted. By the time we reached my parents' house in Connecticut, all I wanted was rest. At first, everything seemed normal. My mom hugged us at the door, my dad gave a stiff smile, and Maya came rushing over with her usual energy. Dinner was lively, with the boys running around and everyone pretending like things were fine. But beneath my dad's half-smiles, there was something sharp, something I'd seen before. When night came, I expected we'd go upstairs to the guest room together. That's when the real issue began. My mom pulled me aside, whispering like it was some secret crime. "Your father says Liam has to sleep downstairs on the couch." I laughed at first, thinking she was joking. "What do you mean? We're married. We have kids. Maya and Kevin always sleep in the same room." Her eyes darted toward the kitchen, where my father sat with his phone, pretending not to listen. "It's different. Kevin is, well, he's one of us. Your father isn't comfortable. Liam is white. Please, Chloe, don't make it harder." The words hit me like a slap. My chest tightened. "Are you serious? He's my husband. You can't just separate us like we're teenagers." She hushed me quickly, almost begging. "Keep your voice down. You don't understand how angry he'll get." I looked at Liam, who was holding our youngest, trying not to overhear, but already sensing the tension. His face was calm, patient as always, but his eyes asked me silently, "What's going on?" I felt trapped. I wanted to scream, to throw every word of sense at them, but instead I stood frozen. The hypocrisy burned me. Maya's husband was sleeping upstairs, welcomed without question. But mine, the man who carried our children when they were tired, who drove us across states without complaint, was being told he wasn't good enough for a bed under their roof. That night, after putting the boys to sleep, I found Liam on the couch. He tried to make it seem fine, joking about how uncomfortable it was, but I could see the hurt underneath. I sat beside him, and we talked in whispers until exhaustion pulled us down. My head rested on his shoulder, his arm wrapped around me, and slowly we drifted off together. In the dark silence of that house, we clung to each other. We didn't know what morning would bring, but we knew one thing. We belonged together, no matter how much they tried to push us apart. The house was heavy with silence, but I couldn't rest. Upstairs the boys were sleeping peacefully, yet I lay awake, my chest tight with anger and shame. I slipped out of bed and padded down the hallway. In the dim glow of the living room lamp, Liam sat upright on the couch, staring at the ceiling. His hands were folded over his chest like he was trying to hold himself together. "You're not asleep either?" I whispered. He looked at me, tired eyes softening. "Couldn't, not on this thing." He patted the couch cushion with a faint smile, but it was the kind of smile that hides pain. I sat down beside him, pulling my knees close. For a moment, neither of us spoke. The ticking of the wall clock filled the air, sharp and steady. Then he finally broke the silence. "It doesn't bother me, you know. The couch, I mean. What bothers me is seeing you upset." I turned toward him, my throat tightening. "It's humiliating. They treat us like kids sneaking around, but we're married. We have children together, Liam. I don't understand how they can look at you and see anything less than family." His hand brushed against mine, and he gave it a gentle squeeze. "I'm used to people not accepting me right away. But I never thought your own parents would draw the line like this. It hurts, yeah, but I'm not angry at you. I'm just sorry you're stuck in the middle." The words spilled out before I could stop them. "You shouldn't have to apologize. You've done nothing wrong. They're the ones who can't let go of their prejudice." My voice cracked, and he pulled me against him. I rested my head on his shoulder, breathing in the steady rhythm of his chest. We sat like that, whispering bits and pieces of thoughts too heavy to carry alone. I told him how my mother's whispers still rang in my ears, how small I felt under the weight of my father's rules. He told me he wished he could shield me from all of it. Slowly, exhaustion crept over us, pulling us down together. My eyes grew heavy, his arm tightened around me, and before long we drifted off in each other's arms. It didn't last. I woke to a sharp hiss, my mother's voice slicing through the quiet. "Chloe, what are you doing?" Her face was pale, her hands clutching her robe tight at her chest. She wasn't yelling loudly, she didn't dare. But her whisper was frantic and sharp, the kind that cuts deeper than a shout. I blinked, still half asleep, my head on Liam's shoulder. What does it look like? I was tired. I fell asleep. Her eyes darted toward the stairs, as though every creak might bring my father storming down. Do you want to ruin everything? What will he say if he sees this? You can't cling to him like a child. It's embarrassing. I stared at her, stunned. My cheeks burned, not from guilt but from disbelief. Embarrassing? He's my husband. How is it embarrassing to sleep next to my own husband? She wrung her hands, desperate, terrified. You don't understand. You'll make him furious. Please, Chloe. Don't make this harder than it already is. Her fear twisted in my chest. It wasn't anger driving her. It was dread of my father. Still, the sting of her words stayed with me. For the first time that night, I wondered if I was the unreasonable one, if comforting the man I loved could really be something wrong. Liam stirred beside me, fully awake now, but he didn't say a word. His silence was steady, grounding, even as my mother's whisper yelling filled the room. I met her eyes, and for once I had no defense left. All I had was the gnawing question tearing through me. Was I the villain here, or was I the only one sane enough to see what love should look like? The morning dragged on in silence. Plates clinked, forks scraped, but no one spoke. My father sat at the head of the table, reading the paper with deliberate calm, his eyes never once lifting toward Liam. It wasn't just avoidance, it was a performance, a message carved into every motion. My mother busied herself with coffee, refilling cups that no one asked for, her hands trembling slightly. Maya chattered half-heartedly about nothing, her words dying quickly in the thick air. Liam ate quietly, focused on helping our boys with their food. He didn't complain, didn't even look angry. That was almost worse. I watched the lines in his face, the way he kept swallowing back words that wanted to rise. My chest burned. Enough was enough. After breakfast, I told my parents we needed to talk. Not later, not when it was convenient, now. My father folded his paper with slow precision, eyes narrowing. Liam followed me into the living room, carrying himself steady, though I could feel the tension in his shoulders. We sat across from my parents, the four of us divided by a gulf wider than the coffee table between us. I spoke first, my voice firmer than I felt. This isn't going to happen again. Liam and I are married. We have children together. You will not separate us in your home, or treat him as if he doesn't belong. For a moment, the only sound was the ticking clock on the wall. Then my father laughed, a short, sharp bark. Married? Children? None of that changes what he is. He's weak. Unworthy. A boy pretending to be a man. I froze. His words cut through me, but he wasn't finished. His voice rose, trembling with something darker than anger. He stole you. Twisted you. Took what was mine. The room went still. Even my mother's hands stopped fidgeting. My breath caught, my skin cold. The way he said it, mine, wasn't the voice of a father. It was something else, something I didn't have a name for, but had always felt lurking beneath his rules. Liam didn't flinch. He sat upright, silent, his jaw set. My eyes darted between him and my father, a sickness settling in my stomach. I had braced myself for arguments about race, about culture, but this was different. My father's face twisted as he leaned forward, his fingers stabbing the air toward Liam. You corrupted her. You ruined what I built. And you think I'll sit here and pretend you're a man worthy of her? Never. No one spoke. The silence after his outburst was louder than his shouting. My mother's lips parted like she might intervene, but no words came. My world tilted, and for the first time, I saw my father not as the stern figure I grew up with, but as something far more disturbing. My father's words still hung in the air like poison when my mother finally moved. She had been sitting stiffly, eyes darting between us, wringing her hands in her lap as though trying to hold something back. But now, as his voice thundered and twisted into something more venomous, she spoke. Not with strength, but with a cracked, weary edge. Stop, Robert, she said, barely above a whisper. It was the first time she had cut across him. He turned to glare at her, but she pushed forward, her voice trembling. They need to know the truth. I can't keep it in anymore. I felt the blood drain from my face. The truth? My mother's hands gripped the arms of her chair, knuckles white. She didn't look at me, not at first. Her eyes stayed fixed on the carpet, as though she couldn't bear the weight of mine. It isn't just about color, she began, her words spilling out like a confession she had rehearsed for years. It never was. He hides behind that, but the real reason, The real reason he despises Liam is because Liam took something he never wanted to let go of. Her words twisted in my stomach. What are you talking about? My voice came out sharp, desperate. My mother finally looked at me, and there were tears trembling at the edges of her eyes. You were never his daughter in the way you thought. To him, you were his possession. He couldn't stand the idea of losing you to anyone, so he ruined every chance you had of happiness. Every boyfriend who suddenly drifted away, every friendship he poisoned, it was all him. He wanted you under his thumb forever. I shook my head slowly, the room spinning. No, that can't be true. But my father didn't deny it. His face hardened, eyes blazing, and that silence said more than words. My mother pressed on, her voice breaking. When Liam came into your life, everything changed. You became stronger, freer. He couldn't handle that. He didn't see a husband who loved you. He saw a thief. That's why the hatred burned so deep, because Liam gave you what he never could, independence. Her confession cracked something inside me. Years of suspicion, moments that never made sense, suddenly aligned. My childhood was littered with invisible strings I hadn't known were being pulled. And she, my mother, had stood by and let it happen. I was afraid, she whispered, tears sliding down her cheeks now. Afraid of his temper, afraid of losing the fragile peace in this house. So I kept quiet. I enforced his rules. I told myself it was to protect you, but it was for me. I betrayed you, Chloe. I let him treat you like that because it was easier for me than standing up to him. The words landed heavier than my father's rage. Betrayal, spoken plainly at last, left me hollow. The room seemed smaller, the air tighter, as I stared at the two people who had raised me and realized neither of them had ever truly seen me as my own person. The room was still, yet everything inside me was spinning. My mother's confession clung to me like smoke I couldn't escape. I stared at them both, one glaring with ownership in his eyes, the other trembling with guilt, and I felt myself hollow out. All the years I thought were strict parenting, all the lectures about how I wasn't ready or deserved better than those boys, all the ways he dismissed Liam from the very beginning, it all reshaped itself into something darker. He hadn't been protecting me. He had been keeping me. I couldn't find words to argue or cry. There was nothing left to ask. I saw my childhood as if a curtain had been torn away. The constant criticism, the friendships that withered without reason, the endless rules that clipped every bit of freedom I tried to claim. And my mother, who had nodded and obeyed, who had whispered excuses into my ear while keeping her eyes averted. She hadn't been powerless. She had chosen silence for her own comfort. The weight of it pressed down so heavily that my body moved before my mind did. I stood, walked past both of them, and headed upstairs. Liam followed without speaking. He didn't need to ask. He knew. Together we packed bags quickly but carefully, folding our son's clothes, gathering the toys scattered across the room. I moved with a calmness that felt unnatural, but beneath it was something unshakable. When I came back downstairs with the boys half asleep in Liam's arms, my parents were still in the living room. My father sat rigid, eyes burning, unwilling to accept that I was leaving. My mother's face was streaked with tears, but she didn't rise to stop me. I set the last bag by the door and finally spoke. My voice was quiet, but it cut through the silence. You have lost your daughter and your grandchildren. Do not contact us. The words were flat, stripped of emotion, because I had none left to give them. Without waiting for an answer, I opened the door and stepped into the night air. The drive began in silence. The boys drifted back to sleep in their seats, their soft breaths filling the car. Liam reached over and took my hand, his grip firm, grounding me. I didn't cry. I didn't even think. The betrayal was too large to fit into feelings. All I could do was stare at the empty road stretching ahead of us, knowing that the life I had left behind was not family, but a cage I would never walk into again. The first night back in our own house felt strangely quiet. The boys slept soundly, unaware of what had shattered in Connecticut, while Liam and I sat together in the dim light of the living room. The numbness that had carried me through the drive home began to fade, and in its place came something sharper, colder. I had walked away, but walking away wasn't enough. Their grip had stretched across my whole life. If I didn't cut every last thread, it would always linger. I thought of my father's face, twisted with rage, and my mother's voice, thick with excuses. They had stripped me down to property, to something owned and managed, and now they expected I would stumble back eventually. No, this time I would make sure there was nothing left to stumble back to. Revenge didn't mean shouting, or throwing back the words they had thrown at me. that would only feed the fire they thrived on. My revenge would be precise, clean, final. It would be life rebuilt without them, but also a message they couldn't ignore. I began with the smallest things. Every photo where their faces lingered on the walls came down. Frames were emptied, boxes were filled. The wedding gift they had sent, a set of crystal glasses, was carefully wrapped and placed into a carton. Childhood keepsakes, birthday presents, cards, each item that tied me to them was gathered and set aside. The house felt lighter with every removal, as though their presence had been seeping into my walls and I was finally scrubbing it out. But erasing them from my home wasn't enough. My father's weakness had never been love, it was pride. He built his whole image on being respected, admired, deferred to. If I struck there, the blow would leave a mark no denial could hide. I thought about how he preened at community gatherings, how he lived off the approval of others. He cared less about family than about what people believed of him. That vanity, that brittle pride, would be the lever I would use. Liam didn't press me for details that night. He watched me sort through the past with steady eyes, understanding that I needed to move piece by piece. When I finally closed the last box, I felt a grim steadiness settle inside me. They had reduced me to an object, but now I would reduce them to what they truly were. Empty figures stripped of the respect they craved. My revenge wasn't rage. It was the calm decision to make their hold on me vanish forever. It was late one evening when the memory surfaced. I had been sorting through papers in the study, clearing out yet more traces of the past, when I came across an old folder with my grandfather's handwriting on the front. The sight of it stopped me. My grandfather, quiet, perceptive, had been the only one who ever seemed to see through my father's performance. Years ago, before I had even finished high school, he had pulled me aside and told me something in a hushed, urgent voice. He had set up a fund for me, one my father would manage until I turned 25. At the time, I hadn't understood the weight of that choice, only that it was meant to protect me. Now, at 24, with the truth of my father's obsession exposed, I realized that money might still exist, unless he had found a way to twist it to his advantage as he twisted everything else. The thought made my chest tighten. I called a lawyer the next morning, explaining what I knew and what I feared. Documents were pulled, accounts examined, and soon the truth was laid bare. My father had been dipping into the fund for years. Not outright theft in his mind. He had justified every withdrawal as expenses of raising her, as though the purpose of that gift had been to reimburse him for being a parent. Reading the report, I felt no surprise, only a cold certainty. Of course he had drained what was never his to touch. Possession, that had always been his language. But this time it wasn't only morality at stake, it was legality. And legality was something he could not shout down or bully away. The lawyer drafted a letter with sharp precision. Every word was chosen to cut deep, leaving no escape. Cease and desist. Full repayment of the remaining funds. Legal action for embezzlement if ignored. The envelope was sent to the address where I had once been a child, but this time the power was reversed. When I imagined him opening it, I didn't picture him enraged like before. I pictured his face hardening, the pride draining from him as he realized he had been caught cornered. His heart had never been vulnerable to me, but his wallet, his reputation, those were the places where pain could reach him. For the first time, I felt a measure of balance return. He had tried to take my life, my freedom, even my future. Now, piece by piece, I was taking it all back. The call came from my cousin, her voice hesitant as if she wasn't sure whether to tell me. My parents had already begun weaving their version of events, painting themselves as the wronged ones, whispering to family friends that I had turned my back on them for the sake of a man who didn't belong. They left out the truth, of course. To them, I was the ungrateful daughter, the traitor who walked away. I listened without shock. This was exactly what I had expected from them. My father's pride couldn't allow silence. He needed a story, one that would protect his image. What he didn't realize was that I had prepared for this. His reputation wasn't a fortress. It was glass, and I had stones ready in my hands. That night I sat at my desk, opened a blank page, and began to write. The words came steadily, stripped of anger, stripped of drama. Calm, precise, undeniable. I didn't mention the disturbing jealousy that had spilled from my father's mouth. That truth was too twisted to expose without staining myself. But there were truths that mattered more, truths that could not be softened or explained away. I wrote of how my husband had been treated under their roof, cast aside not for anything he had done, but for the color of his skin. I wrote of the hypocrisy, how my sister's husband was welcomed warmly while mine was forced to the couch, humiliated as though his love for me was a crime. I wrote of the inheritance my grandfather had left, how it had been drained slowly, justified as though my future was simply another bill to be paid. I did not plead. I did not beg for understanding. I simply laid out the facts, one after the other, like stones in a path leading to the only conclusion. At the end, I explained why I had cut ties, because my children deserved better. They were biracial, and I would not allow them to grow up surrounded by prejudice disguised as tradition. I was not abandoning my family, I was protecting my own. When the letter was finished, I sent copies to the elders, to the family friends whose opinions my father valued most. I sealed each envelope knowing that once opened, the story he had spun would collapse. In our community, reputation was currency. My father had always guarded his fiercely, holding it higher than love. Now, with every whispered reading of my letter, that currency crumbled. He was left exposed, not as the dignified man he pretended to be, but as exactly what he was. And there was nothing he could do to repair it. The months passed quietly. Life settled into a new rhythm, school runs, dinners with laughter, evenings where peace finally felt natural. I had learned to breathe without the shadow of my parents pressing in. Then one evening, a sound broke that stillness, a knock at the door. I froze. Liam glanced at me, concerned, but I already knew. There was a heaviness in that knock, a rhythm that belonged to someone who had once lived inside my bones. I walked slowly to the peephole, my breath shallow. And there she was, my mother. She looked smaller somehow, her shoulders bent, her face drawn and tired. The robe she wore in the mornings had been replaced with a plain coat, but her eyes held the same pleading weight I had seen all my life. It didn't take long to understand. She was alone. She had left him. For a moment, my chest ached. A part of me wanted to open the door, to let her in, to listen. That old reflex tugged at me, the one that had always told me to bend so she wouldn't break. But another part, stronger now, kept me still. I thought of every silence, every excuse, every moment she had chosen him over me. She hadn't just been powerless, she had made choices, and those choices had consequences. I stepped back from the door. Through the window I watched her wait, her eyes searching, her hands twisting in her lap. After a long while, she turned away, her shoulders shaking as she walked down the path alone. My heart hurt, but I didn't move. This was not cruelty. This was the boundary I should have drawn long ago. By keeping it, I finally broke free. 1 year later, the house looked nothing like the place we had returned to in silence after leaving Connecticut. The boys darted around the living room, laughing as they handed Liam tangled strings of lights, and he pretended to wrestle with them until they fell into piles on the floor. Music played softly in the background, and the scent of cinnamon drifted from the kitchen. I stood watching them, the warmth of it all sinking into me. There was no tension here, no glances over shoulders, no need to lower our voices. What we had built was ours alone, small and perfect, but safe. Every sound in the room, from the boys' laughter to Liam's mock complaints, was a reminder that the cycle had ended with me. We had chosen our own rituals. Instead of sitting stiff at a table where silence ruled, we decorated together. Instead of old rules and unspoken fear, there was joking, singing, and the gentle chaos of children stringing ornaments where they didn't quite belong. It wasn't about perfection, it was about freedom. At the center of it all was the couch. The same one where Liam and I had once curled up under my parents' roof, whispered our pain, and fallen asleep under the weight of rejection. Now it sat glowing in the light of our tree, covered in our children's toys, a place of laughter rather than shame. I sat down and the boys climbed into my lap, still buzzing with excitement. Liam settled beside us, his arm around me, steady as ever. In that moment I knew, revenge hadn't been about striking back. It had been about this, choosing love, choosing peace, choosing a life that was wholly our own. And we had it, completely, forever. Walking away wasn't easy, but I knew I had to choose peace for myself and my family. Some people say blood should always come first, but I don't believe that anymore. What about you? Would you have done the same in my place or tried to hold on a little longer? Share your thoughts. I'd love to hear different perspectives. And if my story connected with you, stick around. I've got more to tell.